strategies for enterprise modernization. I am Grant McGaw, your moderator for today, and we will explore how CIOs and IT leaders can integrate AI into legacy systems without disruption. And we're going to be joined by two experts who bring both strategic and technical perspectives to this challenge. They include David Gindy, IT Director, Broward Health, with 20 plus years in IT leadership. David specializes in modernizing legacy systems, cybersecurity compliance, and optimizing IT investments in regulated industries like healthcare. And he understands the real world challenges that CIOs face when balancing AI adoption with operational stability and budget constraints. Then we also have Ronak Shah, CEO of Agile Infoways, that does custom software engineering. He's an expert in this field. Ronak is an AI and software integration veteran, helping enterprises bridge the gap between legacy systems and AI driven innovation. And he designs scalable, secure, and compliant AI solutions that enhance efficiency without costly infrastructure overhauls. So today's discussion will alternate between IT strategy and technical execution, and we'll be covering the key challenges, the security risks, AI adoption strategies, and future trends. So we want to make sure that this is an interactive conversation. If you do have questions, please put them into the chat, and we will be able to answer them as time permits. So I'm going to direct this first question over to David. And David, I'd like to know, as an IT leader, what are the biggest concerns that CIOs and IT directors, such as yourself, have when trying to integrate AI into legacy systems?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Grant Ronak, for this space. I really appreciate it. Um, some of the topics that you touched on in your introduction pretty much were some of the heavy bullet points that I already had. Compatibility and an integration in and of itself. Legacy applications were never designed or created with AI in mind. So AI has to come in and pull that data out and be true to the data. So they can't really be integrated. Modern applications have that integration level. The old ones were leveraging the power of AI to extract and manipulate data, so to speak, without going too much into it. Anything that might happen during those moments of interactions are generally considerations that we have to take place. Um, for example, operational disruptions, meaning what happens when we're pulling from tables, old applications, old data, and AI is extracting that data. Can we ensure uptime without affecting the organization? A really big thing, especially in healthcare. Um, Jokingly, I always say that we work 366 days a year. So it's not when we're home, there's others that are taking our seat and our place and covering. Again, another very valid point that you touched on, Grant, security and compliance, meaning our HIPAA. So is that AI extracting the information, and how are we keeping up with regulatory standards on that information? Because we are dealing with patient data information, PHI, PII. Um, Another big item. I know AI isn't something new. We've had it for many, many years, different names, iterations, evolutions of what we call it. Right now, it feels like it's the big buzzword that goes around, but artificial intelligence has always been there in one way, shape, or form. The talent. Who are those data scientists that can actually help us with an idea or a vision or a thought process or a request from upper management, from revenue cycle, and us getting that information across? And I guess the one of the bigger ones that no one wants to talk about, the 300-pound gorilla in the room, is cost. How do we
Mhm.
justify it? And that's a conversation in and of itself.
That man. So now we're setting the playing field, right?
Those are just
so
some of
so
like the guardrails on it. Obviously, there's so much more on it, and don't want to dig too deep into it. But those were like kind of the 40,000 foot view, so to speak.
that's how you get it started, and especially you're coming from the infrastructure side. You're seeing the legacy systems, what you already have in place, and here you've got this new tech coming. So that's the question I want to bring over to Rona. From a software engineering perspective, what are the most common technical barriers that you encounter when you're integrating AI with the legacy IT stack?
Thank you, Grant. Thank you for this question. Thank you, David, for joining the LinkedIn Live show today. Yeah, so this is an amazing question. Like there are so many barriers that we see when we try to integrate AI with the legacy system because, as David mentioned, when legacy systems were built, they had no idea that AI would ever come and how it's going to work. So the major part what we see is the data silos and inconsistent data format. So legacy system really that often stores the data in their proprietary formats, or on-premise mainframes. The data that we see is kind of sometimes unstructured or incomplete or kind of a low quality data that really makes the AI training very, very difficult. Also, on the legacy system, we see an outdated architecture. So AI really needs in real-time processing, but legacy apps really lack that microservice architecture, or I would say event-driven capabilities. So since they don't have it, it's very difficult for AI to work, and lack of real-time processing capabilities. Legacy system, if you see, they rely on batch processing, while AI model really needs a real-time data streams, so from the legacy system, the slow query responses that really bottlenecks the overall AI speed. There is in terms of the compute, there is a limited compute and the scalability. So there is a huge constraint, so legacy IT that really lacks like GPU acceleration, or I would say cloud elasticity. Now, AI workloads that really needs this cloud elasticity at any given point of time, which very difficult to manage with the legacy systems. Even the on-premises infrastructure, they can't really handle the machine learning training. So even the large AI models are very difficult to manage into that framework. And now coming back to your security and compliance risk, legacy system that really lacks the zero trust security. Now this we know this in the healthcare data privacy laws and HIPAA compliance and all those. So there is so much of restriction of the data usage also for the AI models. So and legacy IT systems do not have a version controlling. We have not seen even CI/CD pipelines deployed, or how do we even monitor the AI models into this infrastructure? So that's a very big challenge. So the final thoughts for this, legacy IT, I would say, is not AI ready, but with APIs or microservices or kind of data modernization, or maybe having a scalable infrastructure, enterprises can or have started bridging the gap in between right now.
Man, this is interesting. I All these pictures from what David just said, Ronak said, I see this big technical debt. First, you just had, this very, probably in David's world, the IT infrastructure was doing pretty good. And then all of a sudden now it becomes outdated like overnight. And then these new, new emerging technologies, yeah, we want to take advantage of them. But whoa, we got to pump the brakes. We got to look at this. And one of the biggest things, and this is top of mind for a lot of people, especially CIOs, is security. So I want to ask David, what are the biggest AI related security risks in legacy environments, and how should IT teams address them?
Okay, so let me try to approach this from a couple of angles. So legacy applications, we already have them guardrailed because we've had them in the environment, in production. Um, Data has its confinement, so we know that that's that's well under control. We start injecting AI, as Ronak very well says, and then AI in itself has certain version control. That was a perfect example. So how do we know that even though we have an LLM, the AI, that we don't have a data leak somewhere within that, and then injecting that into a secure environment? Obviously, we have moral compass and the ideas that everything works out in best interest of who we're serving and how we're doing it. So we have to try to maintain guardrails on a system that we had control over from beginning to end, and inject something new, which at the same time we're learning. And again, to Ronak's point, what we used to know as a consumable in processor, memory, power for this machine, tomorrow, next week, next month, depending on the ask, can be way bigger. So the data privacy and the data leakage, versioning control is always something very, very risky. That how are we integrating these two and maintaining that resiliency and that safekeeping? The tools that are used, they're also very, what I call bleeding edge, a little bit different from cutting edge. Just terms that I coin. Bleeding edge is always a little bit more modern, and we may not have them completely tried and true. So that's a concern as well. Compliancy risk in healthcare, you can't really run the risk because of you're dealing with data. Can you do it in a non-production model? Yes, but are you looking at the risks that are being, um, the possible risks that you might run to in a non-production model as well? You can put all the guardrails that you want, but you don't know how attackers might try to get into it because it's not there. You can do your very, very best, but even that's going in. Are my risk factors other individuals, or are they another AI?
Mm-hmm. These are important things. I see one of your colleagues, Mike McDonough, is talking about that, these LLM integrations. And he likes what Ronak was saying about, security modeling, things that you're talking about, how you go from, secure environments or, HIPAA compliant environments to maybe, non-clinical environments, things of that nature. Here's the question. David just talked about, I'm going to Ronak now. He just talked about security concerns. What are the best practices do you follow to ensure that AI models remain compliant and secure when integrated with the older systems?
Yeah, so see, there are several different things that needs to be considered when we are really trying to make the AI models to stay more secure. First thing is, I would say, the implementing the AI governance. Make sure that the AI really aligns with the regulatory standards like GDPR, HIPAA in US, SOC 2, or ISO 42001. So we have to make sure that the regulatory standards are met. Now, we use something called AI model cards, so we document the model bias or model fairness or how the AI model is decision making. So we try to document all this, and maintaining the audit logs of AI predictions is also very, very important. And we have to conduct the regular compliance audits to make sure that it is really meeting the standards. Now, coming back to the data handling, which David also emphasized. Now, how do you do the secure data handling and privacy protection? So anonymizing and encrypting sensitive data before even the AI starts processing. So you have to anonymize or use AES 256 encryption or something like that. We also emphasize implementing differential privacy. That really prevents the sensitive data leaking. You can prevent that, and for that purpose, you can use like Google TensorFlow privacy for implementing the differential privacy or something, and then apply role-based access control RBAC, or maybe even implement zero trust AI security model. So that's very, very important. Now, when we are doing all this model work, we always try to do the AI model explainability implementation as well. You use explainable AI, XAI, to ensure that the AI decisions which are made are actually transparent. You should be able to explain why this AI decision was made. And when in the beginning phase, we try to have the human in the loop to make sure that they oversight all high risk AI decisions. If you do not have that, AI can make any kind of decision, and it can create really more trouble for the organization. And there are different tools that are used. Like there's a Google has a tool called What If tool. It does like full AI bias testing, so you can really know, if there was any kind of bias in the AI decision. And there is a Fiddler AI tool that can be used, which is more for AI prediction purpose, but it's an amazing tool. Now, also, we need to automate the AI model monitoring. Like we have to have a continuous track of AI model performance or the compliance metrics at the same time. So for model performance, you want to make sure you use like Kubeflow pipelines, which really automates the overall workflow of the machine learning operations as well. So these are some of the practices that can be used for AI model to remain compliant and secure in the legacy IT world.
Man. So that's very, very technical. Both of you have given very, very technical views of what's happening in the AI world with legacy systems. We're going to go back to one of the first highlights that you brought up, David, which is budget, the cost. How do we bring this in? We're already in there's always a shortfall when it comes to the amount of budget we can throw at certain things. So here's the question. For organizations working with limited budgets, what are some low risk? And this came directly from our CIO world when I was asking some of these similar questions. They want to know, what are the low risk AI implementation strategies that CIOs can start with today?
So top of mind, I think for general consumption, AI really means productivity tools. So most of the users are going to look at AI. How is it going to help me? And the end user is looking for that, meaning the co-pilots of the world. We're a Microsoft shop, so I'll just call it and for Google Workspace, we have Gemini. But if we could quantify it, 90% of the people that ask for AI is going to be, the next step of a Grammarly, Grammarly Pro, ChatGPT paid versions. That's what they're looking for. They want to see, their meeting notes. They want to see their attendance, what Copilot did with the meeting, who was in the meeting, a summary of said meeting. So that type of AI, which is very prevalent for the general consumption, is what most people are looking for. We have RPA in organizations for many, many, many years. Remote process automation has existed for many years. So it's just augmenting that with AI. The cloud-based services, like I said already, Copilot, Gemini, anything that's going to make our life easier. I think everybody's gone to ChatGPT and played around with prompts and try to become that really powerful prompt engineer and see the different results that one question presented in different ways yields a different answer. And then obviously the repetitive tasks. Can we do some sort of AI that helps us with, I'll make something up, an inbound communication by like a fax, reading through it, picking up certain information, and then putting it in a spreadsheet and then filing or eliminating that fax insecurely. Because we still have legacy to modern days, and we still run with a lot of fax communications.
This is important. So that I'm glad you brought that up. We're going all the way from facts all the way to AI, and it sounds like just this enormous leap. You think about OCR technology and things like that. But I like how you just kind of streamlined how you can bring in AI, baby steps, and then there's other things you can do with AI. And I want to ask Roanoke this because we're talking about use cases, and that's what a lot of companies are doing, especially in healthcare. Once a enterprise does identify a AI use case, what's the best way to technically implement the AI without disrupting the business continuity?
Yes. So kind of, without disrupting the business operations, you really need to have a phased, I would say, modular approach when you want to implement the AI. To begin with, you should start with a low risk proof of concept, as David mentioned the same way, I would say take a case study of AI powered customer support or something like that, so choose a well defined high impact use case. Now implement AI into the sandbox environment first. Do not deploy into directly into the production. Now use the historical data to test the AI. That's very, very important. Do not give any kind of real data to AI model at all. Use
Mhm.
historical data, test the AI. And once you test the AI with the historical data, you use a success matrix, proof of concept success matrix. Now, what was the real accuracy of using this historical data? How was the performance of the AI model? Or did it even bring the cost savings? Because that's definitely one of the most important particular area that we are trying to target with using AI. Now, also another area is deploy AI as more like a modular, so ensure AI is deployed as a separate scalable service so that can be gradually integrated into your legacy system. Use RESTful APIs or GraphQL or something, which allows AI to interact with the legacy system more smoothly, and we always do this, we implement the feature flagging, so you can even enable or disable AI components at any time without disrupting production. That's very, very important. Now, also, when you are implementing AI into this legacy system, we always try to do a A/B testing. Now,
Mhm.
using the A/B testing, what we do is we try to compare the AI-driven decisions, what AI took the decisions, and then we have humans also taking the decision at the same time, and we try to compare to see what's the variance and how close they were. And then we set up the real time monitoring and a rollback mechanism if something goes wrong. Because we have seen number of times in the AI models that bias and fairness checks are very, very important, because you are training the AI models in some kind of historical data. Now that data could have some kind of bias, so you have to make sure you need to automate that you should be able to find that bias automated way as well, so you have to maintain the audit logs for all the AI decisions, for regulatory transparency as well, and always recommend to set up the CI/CD pipelines for all AI models that should be updated without any downtime, so these are the some of the areas where you can perform or you can plan to integrate AI without disrupting any kind of business operations.
I like that. What I got out of that was be careful. Be careful. Valid, test and then validate and validate and then test again. So that was great. We've got a lot of chatter out here. Barbara is chiming in. She loves what both David and Roanoke are talking about. She's talking about some of what the applications they're looking at, from a physician standpoint, and then just looking at all the different use cases that are available now. This is a big one. We just encountered a little bit of this before we even jumped on, between on-prem and then cloud. And there's a difference between these things and how they operate in certain environments. So I want to ask David, what is your perspective on the role of cloud versus on-prem AI deployment when dealing with legacy infrastructures?
Well, the deployment on easier because it's just requesting services. You're just requesting rack space, you're requesting processors, memory, everything that you need to build out your AI environment. Bringing it on-prem is quite a bit different conversation. I have to have the rack space to do it on my own. All the consumables that are required. I've been looking at some of the equipment, all the offerings from the different companies, the equipment, the water cooled boxes that come out. For me, it brings me back to like my years of Lego. I love that, rolling up my sleeves and playing with the equipment, and the data centers. I think that's probably one of the coolest jobs in IT, to be completely honest, because we still have a hands-on approach. It's not just the web UI. Would I want to have and own my own environment to source and host AI? I would love to. The blinking lights, the show factor of it, it's absolutely gorgeous. Having the data center behind the glass with the darkened background and just all those lights, and seeing what you're putting in, it's here. Being able to see world-class data center at that scale is bragging rights. So back to your question a little bit, deployment, ease of it on in cloud is the way to go. It's just perfect. You just require it, and you're going to get a monthly bill. It's somebody else's responsibility. It's like having Netflix. Every time you pay for the monthly subscription, you are provided a service. You're not worried about where the movie's coming from, how to get it, the quality. It's just always top notch.
Mhm.
If I run my own movie library, I have to account for the power, the cooling, resiliency, all of that. And those are the two factors. Hybrid approach would obviously simplify things a little bit, but it depends on the company's main line of business and their appetite in technology.
Mhm. These are important things and I'm glad you brought up that hybrid scenario. So it's not one or the other. Sometimes it's both, depending on what it is and what you're trying to accomplish. And I know from an engineering standpoint, when you're dealing with like Roanoke's team at Agile InfoWays, they've got to consider all these different things. So my question is to Roanoke, from your standpoint, when you see these things, what are the key factors that you consider when deciding whether to deploy the AI solution on-prem or in the cloud?
So this is always a debate, and whether you deploy AI on premise or cloud, there are pros and cons on both areas. And let's see some of the pros and cons. Like as far as the scalability requirement goes, if you have everything on premises, AI workloads performs well, with low latency processing, so even if you have on-premise infrastructure, AI workload is definitely going to perform well with the automation or real-time inferencing. Um, if you have on-premise infrastructure, it really gives you a full control over the hardware. As David mentioned, you see great lights. You can add GPUs or TPUs or whatever you want to add. Ideal for predictable workloads, it is fine. Best compare, if you look at the benefits of cloud, you can scale dynamically without worrying about anything. It's an on-demand auto scaling. If you use AWS EC2, it's an amazing auto scaling setup. Then you have access to this specialized AI hardware, which on premises it's difficult. Like NVIDIA A100 GPU you want to use, you can use it because now you're on cloud. So for burst workloads or deep learning training, I would say cloud is the way to go. Now, if we look at from the data privacy standpoint, on premises is good because you have a best for the industries with strict regulatory requirements, like healthcare, finance, government. They have so much of data policies. So if you have on premise, data never leaves the corporate network. So it reduces the compliance risk, where on the cloud, cloud offers the benefit of cloud is it offers built-in compliance certification. So you have ISO 27001, HIPAA, GDPR. You don't have to worry about it. As soon as the moment you go, so much of inbuilt compliances are there. But sometimes there are security concerns on the cloud as well, like because you are in the environment where the multi-tenant AI processing is also going on. So there are so number of other companies AI processes are also on. Now consider the cost side. The on-premise, if you're trying to serve everything in-house, it's a high upfront capex cost for AI hardware, storage, networking, maintenance. The way David said, it's crazy. How much you can do. The Netflix and example was a great. Sometimes you may feel it's cost effective for long term and stable AI workloads, but if you really look at it, the cloud, you're only paying as you go. Let's say you're in the AI experimental phase or you need a flexible scaling. It's very, very good. But we have to remember that, constant AI usage on the cloud can get expensive as well, because you have large data transfers going on at a time, and that can really cost you good money. So we have to understand both ways. Now we are in today where we're discussing more about the legacy system, how we're going to benefit legacy system integration, whether you're using on-premise or cloud. So if it is on premises, it kind of sometimes gets easier to integrate with the legacy databases or mainframes, because it supports the low latency API calls. But if you look at the cloud infrastructure, it's a seamless API driven integration, and that's what people love now. It supports the serverless architecture and number of other areas. So these are some of the pros and cons of using on premises versus a cloud AI deployment.
And this begs for another, and I'm thinking about this as I'm listening to both of you. And sometimes it seems like, oh, this is ease of use is there. But then it sounds like it gets complex. And so, the questions I was getting, I was talking to a number of different CIOs about this, and they were worried about, are we adding just more complexity instead of just reducing it? So the question to David would be, how can IT teams make sure AI simplifies operations rather than just overcomplicating them?
I think it's important to quantify a goal, an initial goal, because it can slip away really quick, really expensive, because you don't add AI just to add AI or just to say that you're innovating. And to Ronak's point, you bring it on by stages, whether it's your AI within the Office productivity suite, your co-pilots for Office, or your back office integration with applications, and you do trial and error in confined environments. Because you don't want that project creep to happen, because that project creep turns into a financial disaster. And you have to understand where you're going with it and what a business impact analysis is going to really come back to. How far can you ensure a seamless integration? I'm sorry, between the two. That's the quality of both the data that you have on your legacy and the AI that's working or integrating with it, and making sure, like we said prior, that you don't have any data leaks and privacy. So assuming that we've put up the guardrails and that the relationships between the two, the old and the new, are fine, then it's just that the integration workflow and we don't have any impact in downtime, pretty much. And then, as anything, last thought would be like the AI, and because AI as well has life cycles. It's versioning, it's getting updated constantly. We're ever so evolving with AI as well. We look at it just on the open AI models that we have within just ChatGPT, without going too far. There are new versions every so often. So does that mean that we have to go and revisit our current AI and see how we can improve it or adjust it for better integration? Maybe it's something that's more effective, less power consumption. I mean, the skies are the limits.
These are important. I'm glad we're having this discussion. I hope the audience is really enjoying this because we're trying to bring up the questions that they most likely have because you're dealing with this stuff. And where do you go from here? Now, you brought up the risk of adding, the risk of adding complexity to the environment, right? I want to know from Roanoke's standpoint, do you take this into consideration? Like what development approaches or methodologies help ensure that the AI solution remains scalable and manageable within your scope?
Yeah, so there are some best practices or approach that any technology company should take, to make sure that the AI solutions that they're building, they always stay scalable or manageable. First I would say using the ML ops, which is machine learning operations. You have to, why do we need to use ML ops? So that really helps you more on the automating the AI model. So you can, the AI model will have automated training, automated deployment, and kind of an automated monitoring. It really, these ML ops are so good because it ensures the continuous integration and continuous deployment of the AI models. It really manages the versions and rollback models and like that. So using the MLOps pipelines for automated model training is very important. And I would say you should always try to deploy AI with containerization, use of Docker or Kubernetes for the scalability point of view. Now, agile AI deployment development is also very important. Why you have to do AI development in agile way? So that's very important because that enables the iterative AI development for faster adoption. You can do a small iteration of AI development and that you can adopt quickly. It really ensures when you do it in these small iterations, it ensures the cross-functional collaboration between, we have seen like, data scientists or engineers or business teams. When they work on small iterations, they're able to collaborate much better, and it really reduces the risk by delivering AI solutions in small increments. So, you're kind of reducing your risk as well. Instead of deploying the whole model and then you see a failure,
Mhm.
you do in a small chunks. So for that purpose, I would say use Kanban or Scrum boards
Mhm.
for tracking the AI task much better way. And always we emphasize even in the all the time, I always say use the microservice architecture or API driven architecture because that really decouples the AI components and it's really easier to scale now.
Mhm.
It kind of allows the AI models to be deployed as an independent microservice. That's very important because when you are able to deploy AI model as an independent microservices, if there are problems, you can easily roll back or something like that. And there are so many tools available in the market like Fast API or Flask. You can use that for AI microservice development, or maybe use Kubernetes for AI model scaling. Now, very important part is to have this data centric AI development. Now, why data centric? Because AI performance really depends on a high quality data.
Mhm.
When you have complex models, it's very important to have a very high. So your approach should be very data centric when you design the AI models. Now you have to implement the data pipelines for that or perform data drifts or bias monitoring techniques to make sure your data is really in high quality. So these are the different methodologies. I know I went really deep into tech side, but these are the methodologies that can help to ensure that AI models that you are training or developing really become scalable or manageable at the later stage.
This is important because you're feeding right into important discussions because you're marrying the two worlds, the software layer and then the hardware infrastructure that has to support these applications. That is what David's team is doing within his environment. Now the question is like, do you At what point do you see these red flags? Either are you invited into the design, or are you into the testing phase? What red flags do you see that indicate that an AI initiative might fail because of the legacy system constraints?
A couple of them, and Ronak brought most of them up, to be quite honest with you. Data. And we know that we've known this for always, always, always. The quality of data that we get in is the quality of data that we're going to get out. A small approach to the task is very, very needed. That way we can ensure in that agile framework, that Scrum methodology, is quick wins is going to are going to produce a better result. So we want to make sure that we just do sprints, crawl, walk, run, so to speak, in an approach. Because once it gets away, then it's we're not going to be able to stop it. That obviously creates another red flag, which is a project creep, which, like I mentioned before, is financially distressing. Lack of executive buy-in. Not a lot of people see or share the vision of AI, or understand it, or have good partners that can simplify and express this correctly in layman's terms to someone that might be a little bit more financially driven, or someone that's a little bit more medically driven. So you have to be able to translate from a highly technical statement to a highly medical statement, and be able to find that middle ground and where the value is added. And as repeating myself, the metrics, or what is the end goal? What are we trying to accomplish? So if we get to it step by step by step, but we have to have a beginning and an end defined. It's not just going to start and go. Because then that obviously is going to create that stress in those situations with the executive buy-in that I mentioned. It's communication in all of it, staggered approach, things like that. And as always, the risk of in our space, data and compliance and HIPAA. We can never we can never forget that. It's, again, to what Ronak said. You try with your B copy of the data, you figure out what you're going to do, you identify your results before you go into full production.
That is so important. See, we're getting into the heated part of this discussion. And see, Barbara Carr is, she's continuing to comment, because this shows me the audience is intrigued, because you've got to get the executive buy-in. You've got to understand how these things work, and you've got to have a go, no go kind of strategy. So here's the question. So, Rono, if you've got an AI implementation, you're now starting, this is like a use case or a real case scenario. You're running into technical roadblocks with the legacy integration. Now, at this point, now you got yourself into this, what strategies can the IT teams use to course correct to ensure a successful rollout?
So this is very common. There are always challenges when we start integrating AI in a legacy system. So we always know ahead of time the challenge is always going to be there. So we are kind of ready. So usually we always try to introduce an API first approach, for AI legacy integration. It's very, very important, because, if you really look at the legacy system, they lack the modern AI compatibility. And making the direct integration is very difficult. So you have to use the API, and that will create a middle layer between the AI and legacy IT. And that really makes the approach much better. So you can use, as I said before, even use like RESTful or GraphQL APIs to enable the AI integration with the legacy apps, and now deploying AI as a microservice based system is always important, because microservices will modularize the AI components. So it allows the gradual integration. It's very, very important. So this will always come, that we have to go as a modularized approach to make sure that we do small in the increments, and as I mentioned, you can always manage the AI workload by using the Docker or Kubernetes or something. Now, important part is implement a data breach. Now, legacy databases, they use kind of their incompatible data format. They have incompatible data format, or sometimes they use batch processing. Now, in the beginning, we discussed AI really needs a real-time data access. So that's very important. So you can implement ETL, like, which is extract, transform, or load. So implement the ETL process to clean and reformat the legacy data. So that's why the data breach is very, very important. Now, using a hybrid cloud, which you guys also discussed, and David mentioned about the hybrid cloud. So using the hybrid cloud for AI processing versus the on-premise legacy. So that's very important, because legacy system often lacks the compute power, so we have to have either all on cloud, or you go with the hybrid cloud approach, which really allows the on-premise legacy system to interact with the cloud AI models. And I would strongly suggest that we should always think of implementing the AI observability and performance monitoring. So, because the legacy integration, that can really cause the AI performance degradation. Performance can go down. There could be API failures. How do you know, or how do you have real-time monitoring? So deploy AI observability dashboards, where you can see the real-time loggings, you can see real-time alerts in the system. And while you're able to monitor this real-time, you can address the AI integration failures right there. So these are the way you can overcome some kind of technical roadblocks while integrating AI with the legacy integration.
Man, we've covered a lot of ground, and I've learned a lot. And I hope the audience has learned a lot about what is the boots on the ground situation right now as we begin, this rollout of AI. And to what you said even earlier, David, that we're just dipping our toe in. We're talking about LLMs, or large language models, but AI of itself as a suite of technology is much bigger than that. And you're starting to get more of it rolled out, and it'll be more of a bigger load, like computer vision AI, so it gives more and more video, and it's got more and more data to it. It's a heavier load, so to speak. So when you're looking ahead, as we sit here now and you see what you've got and what's coming down the road, what trends do you see shaping AI driven enterprise modernization in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's almost for an entirely complete session, just in conversation, because the possibilities are infinite. We see it from simple day-to-day tasks in the service center, repetitive tasks within any of the teams. How can an AI change or help us extract data, our normal workflows, reporting, risk assessment, um, at for example, in the hospitals, the edge devices, there's AI there helping us report where the carts are, what their conditions are, the metrics of what they're reading, ambient environment, a million and one pieces of data that we might not be picking up today because we just don't have that technology in place. Cybersecurity. It's like I mentioned before, we have an approach to it, and it might be a little bit reactive, but with AI, you could have the AI protecting against the AI, if that makes sense.
Yep.
the back end office, I mean, I'm looking at it from Microsoft 365. I'm looking at it from
Sure.
cybersecurity. I'm looking at it from the service center. People just being able to get a simple task done quicker with what at one point or another we called a chatbot. Now the chatbot has enough information and we've given it enough data that when Grant calls the help desk, the AI can go and verify information that you've provided and help you with a simple password reset. Are we getting rid of jobs? No, I think they're just evolving. They're
Mhm.
changing. The scope or the approach on certain tasks are there. Um, and a lot of the research, for example, that I did, um, especially to prepare for this meeting with you, is what's one thing that we're never going to be able to change, or we're never going to be able to automate, and why we'll need humans behind the keys. Critical thinking.
Mhm.
We can teach the model a lot, but there is a point in time in which we're still required to make that difficult decision, that important decision. Um, Something that I've had the opportunity to debate, and just because I love to get deep into these conversations, is um, the ethical portion of the AI. Like who is that ethics committee behind it? Where are we setting those guidelines to teach the AI to perform said function correct or incorrectly? Not
Mhm.
just because you were able to leverage the AI and trick it. Now, do you have the password reset for somebody else? So those guardrails and that's part of that critical thinking.
That's
That's
important.
I think a portion that is just never going to go away, and that's why we still need to be very much involved in it.
100%. I would hope you are involved, David, when especially when it comes in a critical application. Well, I would say center as a hospital, when you're talking about turning on and off life-saving equipment and things like that. Who's making that final decision? We're going to really leave that up to a machine, and then who is responsible for that? Who takes the accountability of that? So there's certain things that we really got to be concerned about. I want to bring
Agreed.
that same question to Rono. What are you seeing on the horizon in the next 3 to 5 years?
So, as far as the technology point of view, I believe there's a huge change coming, huge change. I think we are in the baby steps of the AI world right now. And this next 3, 5, 10 years, there'll be enormous changes coming to the industry. So I would say AI powered autonomous enterprises
Mhm.
will be there. So AI driven autonomous business operations, it will kind of reduce the human intervention, like in decision making or workflows, which all the humans are doing. All humans would not be doing it. All the AI will make up to certain level decisions. As I said, David says critical thinking will always be in the human hands, but up to certain level decisions making processes, workflow definitions. AI agents are coming up. They will handle all customer service, supply chain optimizations. IT infrastructure management also will be designed by AI agents. And we are already using AI agents, like this GPT or Copilot or whatever. In the age, it's called agentic AI world. So AI is performing a multi-step automation. It's a multi-step automation going on now in our world. We are a software development company now. AI also helps us a lot. It's still in the process, but AI will eventually write, I would say, even optimize and even debug the code
Mhm.
automatically. I'm pretty sure it's going to reduce our development time probably by 50 or 60% soon. And AI assisted DevOps will come up, that will optimize this CI/CD pipelines. It will do test automation. System monitoring will be automated. So there'll be so many things which are coming up. And also, AI will also decide by itself it should be hybrid AI or only edge computing. So it will decide by itself, and the AI models will shift automatically. If they're using cloud, sometimes they will start using the on-premises infrastructure, depending on where the loads are and how fast they need to process. AI model will start making those decisions. So enterprise will process definitely AI workloads closer to the data source for low latency, but now AI will basically make those decisions as well. Now, as David said, I'm going to emphasize on the cybersecurity side. Enterprise will move towards AI-powered security frameworks. So AI will detect or prevent or respond the cyber threats. Now that's very, very important because very much needed. Like humans can miss that cyber threat sometimes, but AI models will start protecting them eventually. It has started, but I think the models are being more smarter and smarter. So and AI models will also protect themselves from the adversarial attacks or bias injection. So they will become more smarter, and they will also protect themselves from the all outside attacks as well. So in a nutshell, when we talk about AI, we are always scared. What's going to happen? Are we going to lose our job? We're in the software development world. We talk about, okay, 50 or 60% of software is going to be written by itself. We would have a job? Oh yeah, we will always have a job. All humans will have a job. Think the other way around. That AI will really augment the employees rather than replacing them. We are not here to replace anybody. They're going to augment them more, better, more focused. Like AI co-pilots, they will assist the overall employees in better decision making, or you're doing data analysis with more accuracy, or you're engaging your customer with the right data. So AI will give you anything, right answers that you will give it to always your customers. And Microsoft Copilot is a perfect example. Or Salesforce came up with the Einstein GPT.
Yep.
Those are so great technology that can be used. So these are the modernizations are coming up. We just covered a very small bit of it. As David said, we need a whole session
Just
to cover up number of innovations which are going on in the world right
Well,
now.
David's going to be on his way to HIMSS in Las Vegas, where he'll be
Yes,
able to
sir.
see some of the latest and greatest that are coming out to help augment some of the things that are happening for healthcare innovation. How do we lower costs, get better patient outcomes? This is very, very important. Here's just one last question. You got about a minute, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know this, is that what is the best way for IT leaders to evaluate AI vendors? And you're going to see a ton of them out there in Vegas. How do you evaluate these AI vendors to ensure they align with enterprise goals?
You have to understand what your goal is first and foremost. I mean, everybody has an offering, and it just could be that today's grants offering is above Ronak's offering, or it's just more aligned with what we have in that ask. And flip it a year, 2 years down the road, it's your offering worked for that goal in mind, and now it's Ronak's turn. It's an ever evolving market, to be honest with you. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a one person. And if you evolve with it, then the relationship might continue. But it's absolutely possible and available that you have to look at other people's approach.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, like Ronak said, we're the ones feeding the AI. So you going back to the example, Grant, you were feeding it one way, right-handed. Ronak is feeding it left-handed, and it just happens to be that this is what's going to work from, if we could be that squared from year 3 forward. It's that simple. It's an ever evolving environment. I don't think it's something that's going. I know that it's not. It's not something that's going to be stagnant. We see changes
I trust that,
every
and
couple
I
of
want to thank
months.
you. No, it's going to grow exponentially. We're going to ride this wave with it. I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us this afternoon, David. This has been wonderful. Always great listening to you, Ronak. I learned so much from listening to you and how you really implement these types of things. And when you see real world applications that David is working in, the more that we collaborate and conversate together, we can both meet our goals. So thanks again for being with us this afternoon with Agile and
Thank you both for the opportunity.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, guys.